It was supposed to be a routine passage. The Tranquility, a stout shipliner, was charting its usual course through the vast emptiness of the Atlantic when the distress call came in. A garbled transmission, crackling through the radio static, broken and barely decipherable, yet unmistakably a cry for help. "This is Pearl of the Sea. We need assistance. Please, we need." And then nothing but eerie silence. Captain Rhodes furrowed his brow. Pearl of the Sea was a luxury cruiser, known for its elegance and opulence, capable of carrying over 3,000 passengers. For a ship of that size to be in distress was unheard of. The captain ordered a change of course immediately. We were about 4 hours out from the coordinates they'd last transmitted, and by the time we reached the location, the fog had rolled in thick and heavy. Through the mist, we saw her, Pearl of the Sea, a majestic vessel, now eerily silent, shrouded in a thick veil of fog, floating aimlessly on the dark waters. No lights, no signs of life. It was as if she were a ghost ship drifting through the mists of time. "Get a boarding party ready," Captain ordered, and 10 of us, including myself, were chosen. We suited up, nerves crackling like live wires. As we approached in our small motorized dinghy, a chill ran down my spine. There was something profoundly wrong about the way Pearl loomed above us, like an ancient leviathan awakened from the depths. We boarded her amidships. The deck was deserted, an unsettling quiet hanging in the air. Not a single soul to greet us, no hurried footsteps, no cries for help, just silence, oppressive and thick. We split into smaller groups, each taking a different section of the ship to search for signs of life. The opulence of the cruiser was still evident. The grand chandeliers, the polished woodwork, the plush carpets, but everything was in disarray. Tables overturned, glasses shattered, food left to rot as if the people had vanished mid-meal. And yet, there were no signs of a struggle. No blood, no broken bodies. Just absence. I headed down towards the lower decks with 2 others, Jenkins and Reyes. The corridors were dimly lit, shadows flickering in the few functioning lights. The air was thick with a musty smell, and a cold draft swept through the halls. As we descended deeper, the feeling of unease grew stronger, like something unseen was watching us from the shadows. We reached the crew quarters. Everything was untouched, beds still made, personal belongings scattered, as if the crew had simply walked away. Reyes opened one of the lockers, and out tumbled a rosary, the beads clattering to the floor in the dead silence. He picked it up, his face pale, muttering a prayer under his breath. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the hallway, followed by the sound of footsteps running, but not towards us. We froze, ears straining in the silence. "Who's there?" Jenkins called out, his voice echoing back to us, swallowed by the darkness. There was no answer, just the fading sound of footsteps leading deeper into the ship. We followed the sound, our flashlights cutting through the gloom. The temperature seemed to drop with every step, our breath visible in the dim light. We reached a set of heavy steel doors marked "Engine Room" and pushed them open. Inside, the air was frigid, our breath forming white clouds. The engines were still, a soft ticking the only sound in the vast emptiness. Then we heard it, a soft whisper, a murmur just at the edge of hearing. We exchanged glances, fear flickering in our eyes. "Did you hear that?" Jenkins asked, his voice barely a whisper. We nodded, straining to hear. The whisper grew louder, coming from the far corner of the room, near the control panel. We approached cautiously, the whisper turning into a chorus of voices overlapping, indistinguishable, like 1,000 souls speaking at once. As we rounded the corner, our flashlights flickered and died. We were plunged into darkness, the whispering now a cacophony of voices all around us. "Get back," I shouted, my voice lost in the noise. We stumbled backward, and suddenly the lights flickered back on. Whispering stopped. The engine room was empty, save for the 3 of us. Jenkins was pale, his hands shaking, and Reyes was clutching the rosary tightly, his knuckles white. "We need to leave," Reyes said, his voice barely audible. I nodded, and we made our way back up to the deck. Silence now more terrifying than the voices. As we regrouped with the others, it was clear that everyone had experienced something. Williams, who had gone to the bridge, reported seeing shadowy figures darting just out of sight. Morgan and Turner, who had gone to the dining hall, claimed to have heard laughter, childlike, innocent, yet somehow deeply unsettling. We decided to make our way to the communications room, hoping to find a clue as to what happened. The room was a mess of tangled wires and broken equipment, as if something had violently torn through. On the floor, the radio was still intact, the stress signal playing on a loop. But as we approached, the signal changed, the garbled transmission turning into a single voice, clear and distinct, cutting through the static. "You shouldn't have come here." We all froze, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. The voice was calm, almost serene, but there was an underlying malice, coldness that chilled me to the bone. Then the lights flickered again, and the room was plunged into darkness. I heard someone scream, and then chaos erupted. Shadows seemed to come alive, swirling around us, reaching out with cold, unseen hand. I felt something brush past me, cold and clammy, and I swung out blindly, hitting nothing but air. The sound of panicked breathing filled the room, and in the dim emergency lights, I saw Jenkins being dragged into the darkness, his screams cut short by an unseen force. "Jenkins!" I shouted, rushing forward, but it was too late. He was gone, the darkness swallowing him whole. Panic set in. We needed to get out, now. We stumbled our way back to the deck, shadows moving in the corners of our eyes, whispers echoing in our ears. The ship was alive with the sound of something not human. As we reached the deck, we heard it, a low, guttural growl, coming from all around us. I turned, and in the mist, I saw them, figures dark and indistinct, standing at the edge of the fog, watching us with glowing eyes. There must have been dozens of them, maybe more, their forms shifting and flickering like smoke. "Get to the boat," I shouted, and we ran, figures closing in around us. We reached the edge of the ship and clambered down the rope ladder, my heart pounding in my chest. The dinghy was still there, bobbing gently in the water. We piled in, and I fumbled with the engine, my hands shaking. As we pulled away from Pearl of the Sea, I looked back. The figures were still there, standing at the edge of the deck, watching us with those glowing eyes. I felt a shiver run down my spine as the fog began to close in around them, swallowing them from sight. But their eyes remained, floating in the mist, burning into my soul. We reached the Tranquility, just as the fog lifted, the sight of our ship a welcome relief. But as we climbed aboard, a sense of dread washed over me. The deck was deserted, not a soul in sight. "Captain Rhodes," I called out, but there was no answer. We searched the ship, desperation mounting with every empty room, every silent corridor. The Tranquility was as empty as Pearl of the Sea. Crew, the passengers, gone, vanished without a trace. And then we heard it, a soft whisper, a murmur just at the edge of hearing, coming from the radio on the bridge. We turned it on, and the voice came through, clear and cold, a voice I will never forget. "You shouldn't have come here. Now you can never leave." The lights flickered, and the whispering grew louder, filling the ship with its eerie chorus. The temperature dropped, and I could see my breath fogging in the air. The shadows seemed to grow darker, deeper, reaching out with cold, unseen hands. I realized then, with a sickening dread, that we were no longer on the Tranquility. We were on Pearl of the Sea, or perhaps the two ships had become one, merged in a way that defied all reason. I felt a cold hand close around my arm, and I turned to see a figure, dark and indistinct, standing behind me. Its eyes glowed with a cold, malevolent light, and I knew, in that moment, we were lost. Pearl of the Sea had claimed us, just as it had claimed them all. And now, we would sail the ghostly seas forever, lost in the mist, forever trapped in the darkness. We shouldn't have come here, and now we can never leave.